The Essential Bible, Encountering the Heart of the Living God, Day 13 of 21. We are now in the New Testament and we're spending 5 days looking at the story of Jesus from the four Gospels. On the first day we looked at the mission and ministry of Jesus. We looked at how he was called to bring good news to the poor and the oppressed. And we looked at some of his miracles. The feeding of the 5,000, Jesus walking on the water, and Jesus raising Lazarus from the dead. Today we're going to be looking at some of the teaching of Jesus, and then on the next 3 days we'll see how Jesus encountered conflict with the religious leaders. We'll hear the story of how Jesus spent the Last Supper with his disciples, and then we come to the account of the crucifixion and Jesus' subsequent resurrection. We begin today with some of the teaching of Jesus from the Gospel of Matthew, chapters 5, 6 and 7. One day, when Jesus saw the crowds, he went up on a mountainside and sat down. His followers gathered around and he began to teach them as follows. Blessed are those who recognize their spiritual need, for the kingdom of heaven belongs to them. Blessed are those who mourn, for God will comfort them. Blessed are the humble, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be satisfied. Blessed are those who show mercy to others, for God will show mercy to them. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are those who strive for peace, for God will call them his children. Blessed are those who are persecuted for doing what is right, for the kingdom of heaven belongs to them. Blessed are my followers. They may be insulted, hurt, and lied about. People may speak evil about them because of me, but they should rejoice and be very happy, for a great reward awaits them in heaven. People have always done evil things to the prophets. Jesus goes on to say, do not think that I have come to abolish the scriptures, the law of Moses and the prophets. No, I have come to bring about what they reveal. I tell you the truth, that God's law is more real and lasting than the heaven and the earth. Every tiniest detail of God's law will remain until it achieves its purpose. You have heard it said that you should love your neighbour as yourself, but hate your enemy. But I say, love your enemy, pray for those who hurt you. Then you will be children of your Father in heaven, for he causes the sun to rise on people who are both evil and good. He also provides rain for all, both those who do right and those who do wrong. If all you do is love those who love you, even tax collectors do that, you will not receive any reward. If you are only kind to your friends, even pagans who don't know God do that, you are no different from anyone else. So you should be gracious and generous towards everyone in the same way that your Father in heaven is gracious and generous to you. Watch out. Do not do good deeds to impress other people. If you do that, you will receive no reward from your Father in heaven. So when you give to the needy, don't announce it like the hypocrites do. They blow trumpets in the synagogues and streets so people will honour them. But I tell you the truth. They may receive praise from people, but they will not receive any reward from God. So, When you give to the needy, don't let anyone know what you are doing. Give secretly. Then your Father in heaven, who sees what is done in secret, will reward you. Similarly, do not be like the hypocrites who love to pray in the synagogues and on street corners to impress people. When you pray, don't pray like the pagans who don't know God. They babble on and on, thinking that God will hear them because of their many words. Don't be like them, because your Father in heaven knows what you need even before you ask him. So pray like this: Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come. Your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us today our daily bread. Forgive us our sins as we forgive those who sin against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. If you forgive the failings of others, your Father in heaven will forgive you. But if you don't forgive others, your Father in heaven will not forgive your failings. Watch out! Do not store treasure here on earth, where it may be eaten by moths or corroded by rust, or thieves may break in and steal it. Instead, store treasure for yourself in heaven, where it will never be eaten by moths or corroded by rust, and it is beyond the reach of thieves. For wherever your treasure is, your heart will be also. No one can worship two gods, because you will be torn between the two. You will either hate one and love the other, or be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot worship both God and worldly riches. So, don't worry about the food, drink, or clothes you need, for I tell you the truth. There is so much more to life than food and clothing. Consider the birds. They don't plant or harvest or store food in barns because God feeds them. You know that you are much more valuable to God than birds are, so don't worry. You cannot add a single day to your life by worrying about it. Beware, do not judge others, otherwise you will be judged. For you will be judged in the same way that you judge others. The standards you apply to others will be the standards applied to you. So why do you notice a little speck of dust in your friend's eye and yet miss the big piece of wood in your own? How can you say to your friend, "Let me help you get rid of that speck in your eye," when you can't even see the piece of wood in your own eye? Don't be a hypocrite. First remove the piece of wood from your own eye. Then you might see well enough to deal with the speck in your friend's eye. Treat others in the same way that you would like to be treated by them. This is the essence of all that is taught in the law of Moses and the prophets. Those who listen to my teaching and obey it are like a wise person who builds a house on solid rock. When the rains descend and the floods rise and the winds beat strongly against that house, it will stand firm on the rock. But those who listen to my teaching and ignore it are like a foolish person who builds a house on shifting sand. When the rains descend and the floods rise and the winds beat strongly against that house, it will collapse with a great crash. When Jesus finished telling them these things, people were astonished, because they had never heard teaching like it. Unlike the scribes, the teachers of religious law, Jesus taught with real authority. We're going to take a couple of parables now from Luke chapter 15. The first is the parable of the lost sheep. Tax collectors and sinners drew near to listen to Jesus, but the Pharisees and the scribes complained, "This man welcomes sinners and even eats with them." So Jesus told them this story. If a man has 100 sheep and loses one, wouldn't he leave the 99 to search for the lost one until he found it? And when he has found it, he would rejoice and carry it home on his shoulders. Then he would call his friends and neighbours to celebrate with him because he found his lost sheep. Similarly, there will be more joy in heaven over one sinner whose life is transformed and returns to God than over 99 good people in no need of rescue. The second parable is the parable of the lost son. Then Jesus told them this story. There was once a man who had 2 sons. One day, the younger son said to his father, "Give me my share of the inheritance now." So the father divided his property between his 2 sons. Not many days afterwards, the younger son gathered together all that was now his and travelled to a distant country. There he squandered all his money on reckless living. When he had no money left, there was a severe famine, and so he became poor and hungry. Then he hired himself out to a citizen of that country. His work was degrading for a Jew, feeding pigs in the field. He became so desperate that he would even have eaten the pods the pigs were feeding on, but no one gave him anything. Eventually, he came to his senses and realized that whilst he was almost dying of hunger, his father's hired servants have more than enough food to eat. So he decided to return home and say to his father, "Father, I have sinned against God and against you. I am no longer worthy to be your son, but please hire me as a servant." So the son set off to return home to his father. But his father saw him coming when he was still a long way off. The father was filled with compassion for his wayward son, and so he ran to hug and kiss him. As planned, the son said, "Father, I have sinned against God and against you, and I am no longer worthy to be your son." But his father thought differently and said to the servants, "Hurry, bring the best robe and put it on him. Also put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Kill the fattened calf. We must have a feast to celebrate. For this son of mine was dead, but now he is alive again. He was lost, but now he is found." So they began to celebrate. When the older son approached home after his day's work in the fields, he heard music and dancing. So he summoned one of the servants and asked what was happening. The servant informed him, "Your brother has returned home safe and well, and so your father has killed the fattened calf to celebrate." That made the older son angry, and so he wouldn't go in. Instead, his father came out to try and persuade him to come in. But the older son said, "I've served you for many years and never disobeyed your commands. Yet you have never even given me a young goat to celebrate with my friends. But as soon as this son of yours comes back after squandering all your money on prostitutes, you kill the fattened calf." His father responded, "My son, you have always stood by me, and everything I have is yours. But we must celebrate because your brother was dead, and now he is alive again. He was lost, but now he is found." Coming up next time, Jesus encounters conflict with the religious leaders.